Ashana, Perek Beis, Mishnah Vav. Our Mishnah continues the theme of the Eidim who came to give Eidos of the new moon for Kiddush HaChodesh and tells us, Keitzad boidkin es ha'edim. How did the Bezdin do their investigation of the Eidim in order to ensure the veracity of the testimony that they were hearing, to ensure that the Eidim were telling us the truth? And the Mishnah tells us, Zug shebo rishon, the first pair that came, the first pair of witnesses that came to Yerushalayim, boidkin oisai rishon, they would be the first ones to be investigated. Umachnisin es hagodol shebehem, and Bezdin would bring in the elder of the two witnesses that came. The protocol was always the elder came first out of kavod, and the Eidim were always investigated separately, never together. V'ayimim loy, and Bezdin would say to the witness, Emoi, say, tell us, Keitzad ra'isa es halavona, how did you see the new moon? Lifnei hachama or la'acha hachama? Was it before the sun or was it after the sun? What does this mean? Let's give a quick introduction into a little bit of astronomy. Remember, we have here a tennis ball which we'll consider to be the Earth, and a table tennis ball which we'll consider to be the moon. The Earth is constantly turning. It's turning in an anti-clockwise easterly direction. The moon is constantly going around the Earth, and it takes 1 month to make one revolution around the Earth. At the same time, these two, the Earth and the moon, are constantly going around the sun, and it takes 1 year for them to make one revolution around the sun. Now imagine we have, from this direction, the sun shining down onto the moon. So the rays of the sun are shining down onto this moon. Remember that the moon has no light of its own. It's only reflecting the light of the sun. When we're standing here on this Earth, all we see at this point is the dark side of the moon. We can't see the moon at all, because the light side of the moon, which is being illuminated from the sun, is facing the sun. The dark side is facing the Earth. As the moon moves out of alignment with the sun, a little bit of the moon can now be seen, a crescent, because that's the amount that's being illuminated by the sun, and more of the moon can be seen through the month as the moon moves around the Earth. Till at this point here, where the moon is opposite the sun, the entirety of the light side of the moon can now be seen by the people on Earth. The sun is shining down onto the moon, and we can see the light side over here. That's the middle of the month. That's the full moon. As the moon continues to move around the Earth, less and less of the moon can be seen again as the moon gets closer to the sun. Now imagine, let's just change. This is now the sun, and this is again the moon. So here we have the sun shining down. The moon at the end of the month is coming closer and closer to the sun. We can see less and less of it, until again it's in line with the sun, and people on Earth can't see anything at all because the light side of the moon is shining to the sun. At the end of the month, we can see that the moon is to the west of the sun. As the new moon forms, and the point of the moilad is the point at which the moon can again start to be seen after it was in complete total darkness. The moon is, so to speak, reborn, and we can see a little crescent of the moon. As the new moon starts, it is to the west, it is to the east of the sun. So it's to the west of the sun at the end of the month, and to the east of the sun at the beginning of the month. Now we know that every day, the sun rises in the east and it sets in the west. In fact, however, it's not only the sun that rises in the east and sets to the west, it's everything in the sky. Everything in the celestial sphere, the moon, the stars, everything is rising in the sun, moving across and setting in the west. It's just that during the day, because the sky is so illuminated by the sun, all you can see is the sun. You cannot see the stars, you cannot see the moon, although they're all out there. At the beginning of the month, we said that the moon is just to the east of the sun. So when the sun starts to rise in the east, imagine this is my east and this is my west. The sun rises in the morning to the east, and it is followed and trailed behind by the new moon. However, during the day as it's rising, you can't actually see the moon because the sky is so illuminated by the sun. It blocks out the moon. During the day, it goes towards the west, and as the end of the day, the sky starts to darken and the sun starts to set, you can now begin to see the moon. This is the only time that the moon can be seen at the beginning of the month. in the western sky. And as the sun sets and the sky now becomes dark, you can see the new moon until the moon sets a little while later. So the only time to actually see the moon at the beginning of the month is at the end of the day, around Shkia time, and the beginning of the night in the western sky. Exactly the opposite happens at the end of the month. At the end of the month, remember we said that the moon is to the west of the sun. So in that case, when the sun is rising in the morning, it's following the moon. The moon rises first, followed slowly by the sun. And at that point, you can no longer see the moon again. The only time you can see the moon is before the sun has started to rise. So first you see the moon at the beginning of the day in the sky, followed by the sun, which now blocks out the rays of the moon. All during the day you see the sun, you no longer see the moon, and at the end of the day, the moon will set first, followed by the sun. The question, therefore, that Beis Din are asking the witnesses is, Keitzad or Isa es halavona? How did you see the moon? Lifnei hachama or la'acha hachama? Was it in front of the sun, like that, which would actually be the wrong answer because that's the old moon, not the new moon? Or was it la'acha hachama? Was it trailing the sun, which is the case with a new moon? The next question Beis Din would ask, Litzvaina or ledroima? Did you see it to the north of the sun or to the south of the sun? To its right or to its left? In fact, the ecliptic of the sun is not completely to east-west like that. It actually goes in a southerly direction and then in a northerly direction, setting in the west. Trailed by the moon, and here we can see clearly that the moon is to the left of the sun. There will be times, however, depending on the latitude of the person and depending on the seasons, where the moon may be either north or to the south of the sun, either to its right or to its left, depending on the season. The next question was, Kama hoya gavoya? How high was it in the sky? Now clearly the Edom were not expected to make astronomical calculations to work out exactly how high it was in the sky. They were asked for a perception. How did it seem to be? Did it seem to be the height of a tree, the height of a person, the height of two people? And a little bit of inaccuracy between Edom was allowed here because this is a very subjective type of measurement. But it had to be within reason. The next question was, which way was it leaning? Which way were the points of the crescent of the moon facing? Now we will see that it's always the points of the moon will point away from the sun. However, were they pointing in this direction, or this direction? Clearly, if the sun is ahead of the moon, the points of the moon, the bits of the moon which are being shined at, will be pointing away from the sun. The only question is, what angle were those points facing? Says the Mishnah, V'kama hoya. The next question was, how wide was it? How wide was the moon? Now the moon always actually is the same width at the beginning of the month. But again, it's a perception matter. The closer the moon is to the horizon, the larger it will seem to be. And therefore it will need to be wider. So according to the exact time of day and the place where the person was, will be whether he's answering correctly or incorrectly. Im Omar lefnei hachama, says the Mishnah, if he answered that it was before the sun, that the moon came first, followed by the sun, lo yomar klum, he hasn't said anything, because that's the old moon, that's not the new moon. Interestingly is that the Mishnah only brings this one question, and only says on this one, lo yomar klum. In fact, the answers to all the other ones also had to be correct, and the Mishnah doesn't mention them. The reason for that is because this answer is clearly, definitely incorrect. The answers to the other ones depends on exactly where he's standing, what his latitude is, what time of the year it is, and therefore it's not so clear-cut for the Mishnah to mention it specifically. The Achakach, says the Mishnah, after that, they would bring in the second of this pair of witnesses, and they would investigate him as well and ask him the same questions that they asked the first one. If it turns out that their words coincide and they seem to be telling the truth, Eidusun kayemes, then their Eidus is correct, their Eidus is mukuyum, it is established, and Beis Din are happy to make Rosh Chodesh on the 30th day. Usha kol hazugos, and all the other pairs who were waiting there in the courtyard, Shailin oisam roshay devarim, they would ask them the main points. Loisha hayu tzrichin lahen, Not that they actually needed all these other pairs, because once they have two witnesses that tell them the truth, they can establish Rosh Chodesh based on their testimony. Elo kadei shelo yetzu b'pachi nefesh. The only reason why they asked all these other pairs is in order that they shouldn't leave despondent, they shouldn't leave all disappointed. B'shvil sheyu regilim lovai, in order to encourage them to come again in the future. If they felt that they had just been sent home without even being asked any questions, they would feel the whole thing is a waste of time, and next time they wouldn't want to come along. And therefore, to encourage them to come, they used to bring in the other witnesses and ask them the main points, so it gives them a certain feeling of satisfaction. The Ad Kan, Mishnah Vav.